In Britain, a basic van used to subtly surpass the majority of automobiles on the road in terms of influence rather than speed. The Ford Transit Mk1, 1965 to 1978, was not intended to be a cultural symbol or to be glamorous. However, beneath its unassuming exterior and working-class goals were a number of unexpected choices, untapped potential, and unanticipated outcomes that altered how Britain moved, worked, and constructed its future. This story is fascinating not only because of what the Transit accomplished, but also because of what it disclosed about a whole period of ambition, industry, and subdued power Britain was gradually reconstructing itself in the years after World War II. Businesses were rising, industry was under pressure to modernize, and craftsmen needed something dependable, reasonably priced, and able to meet the increasing needs of a reviving economy. The market for commercial vehicles was fragmented at the time, with antiquated vans that were inefficient and uncomfortable. In addition to competing, Ford saw a chance to integrate its European strategy and produce a single van with a daring design that could serve several markets in 1965. Something completely different from what British drivers were accustomed to arose. The Transit Mk1 didn't have a conventional van appearance. It was wider, more stable, and most importantly, it had a car-like front engine, rear-wheel drive configuration. Just this choice was subtly revolutionary. The Transit provided something more in line with appropriate driving characteristics, whereas the majority of vans of the time felt constrained and agrarian. On lengthy trips, it could feel calm despite carrying a significant amount of weight. It was the first van that didn't feel like a compromise to a lot of drivers. However, the Transit Mk1's true adaptability was one of its most startling mysteries. Ford designed it with an amazing variety of variations, including a high roof, a low roof, a short wheelbase, a long wheelbase, and several engine choices. It was a platform, not just a van. There was a version that met the specific requirements of builders, electricians, delivery services, and even emergency services. It was subtly unstoppable in the market because of its adaptability. Beneath the surface, there was performance as well. The Transit was surprisingly fast for a commercial vehicle in some configurations, particularly those with larger engines like the V4 or later V6 choices. So much so that it gained a reputation that extended well beyond sincere labor. In fact, in the late 1960s and early 1970s, it gained notoriety as Britain's go-to getaway car. It was perfect for more than just deliveries because of its speed, load capacity, and durability. Ford never promoted this reputation, but it contributed to the van's nearly legendary fame. Despite all of its advantages, the Transit Mk1 was far from ideal. Rust was one of its most destructive and enduring defects. Corrosion protection was not as advanced as it would be in subsequent decades, similar to many cars of the time. Hard-working Transits frequently deteriorated quickly due to their frequent exposure to weather, large loads, and long hours. Panels rusted, floors weakened, and structural integrity may deteriorate far sooner than owners anticipated. It turned into one of the van's most annoying paradoxes. It was physically weak but mechanically strong. Behind the scenes, there were also business demands. Even though the Transit was successful, competition was growing throughout Europe at the time. Manufacturers were starting to realize how important the light commercial market was, and new competitors with more refinement and efficiency appeared. Ford had to make regular adjustments in order to maintain its position in a market that it had successfully transformed, improve interiors, and refine engines. Despite these difficulties, people's emotional attachment to the Transit Mk1 was unmatched by anything else in its class. For many families, it was an integral part of everyday life rather than merely a means of transportation for work. It transported commodities, tools, and occasionally whole livelihoods. Tradesmen depended on it for survival as well as transportation. It led to the growth of small enterprises. With a transit at its core, towns were served, residences were constructed, and deliveries were made. That kind of legacy has a certain honesty. The transit didn't exist to impress, in contrast to luxury saloons or sports automobiles. It was there to work. Nevertheless, it gained a greater level of respect in the process. It came to represent dependability, pragmatism, and calm resiliency. The kind of car that people trusted without question. Long-distance operators who pushed these vans well beyond their intended limits have a story that exemplifies their enduring strength. A well-maintained Transit Mk1 could frequently go hundreds of thousands of miles in challenging circumstances and with high loads. Drivers talked about gearboxes that withstood years of punishment, engines that never gave up, and chassis that carried far more than they were designed to. These weren't individual incidents. Rather, they were a part of a larger trend that shaped the Transit's image. However, the Transit Mk1 was unable to avoid the forces of change, much like many other cars of its era. By the late 1970s, the automotive industry was starting to change due to new laws, changing safety requirements, and changing financial circumstances. Fuel efficiency became increasingly important as a result of the oil crisis, and consumers began to demand greater durability and refinement. In response, Ford produced the next generation, eventually replacing the Mk1 with a more contemporary model. Although it was not dramatic, its absence was noteworthy. The original Transit gradually disappeared from the road as subsequent variants replaced it. Only a few of them made it into subsequent decades after rust claimed many of them, and the others were worn down by rigorous effort. Few people kept them at the time, in contrast to collectible sports cars. After all, they weren't treasures, they were tools. However, the narrative feels different now. The Transit Mk1 is remembered for its functions rather than its appearance. It aided in defining a whole section. It helped a generation of laborers. It gradually rose to prominence as one of Britain's most significant automobiles, not because of its glitz, but rather because of its practicality. That kind of influence has a very nostalgic quality. The sight of a Transit Mk1 evokes more than simply recollections of a car for those who remember them. It brings back memories of a simpler time when dependability was more important than elegance, and a van could be an essential part of daily life without ever needing to be acknowledged. That might be the most amazing secret of all. The Transit Mk1 never aimed for legendary status. Day after day, mile after mile, it just did what it was supposed to. By doing this, it created a history that very few automobiles, regardless of kind, can really duplicate. Consider subscribing if you enjoy tales like these that are based on actual history and the technology that subtly influenced it. There's always more to tell them.